So I think networking is a necessary evil. Nobody likes to do it, but you need to. Well, there are some people who like to do it. When I say networking, I mean like pure, like not just like going out to like input. Like I don't know. When I say networking, I mean purely like going to things to make connections to get a job. I think like nobody likes to do that, but it's a necessary evil. You're not going to get where you need to be without meeting the right people. I mean, a very small percentage of people will be able to do that without meeting the right people. But for the rest of us, normal people, we have to put ourselves out there and we have to meet people to talk about their experiences to get more information. And that's how we're going to like learn more about where we want to be and what goals we have for ourselves. So it is a necessary evil. And I think like, I mean, I know you said the term like snakes and stuff because a lot of people call Macomb students snakes and they associate that with networking. And I think like, I mean, what are you going to do? It's like, it's literally part of our major, I feel like. And like, I don't think it's fair to call Macomb's people snakes and just kind of umbrella everybody into the same thing. Because networking to us is like very important and it's taught that it's important too. I mean, like, I don't know how you would disagree with that.
Hey y'all, welcome back to another episode of Nuanced Nonsense. We're not experts, we just like talking. This is your co-host Alex.
And this is your other co-host Ben, and I brought on my good friend Cameron and fellow YouTuber. Anything you'd like to
add? Not really. I mean, I just graduated college. Me and Ben, we weren't classmates, but we met in college, and we both went to the University of Texas at Austin. So that's how I know him. And yeah.
And so we typically start off with like an easy question. This one could be loaded depending on your college experience, but your college been after graduating? Like anything you regret, anything you're proud of, anything highs or lows?
Yeah. Okay. I'll answer that in two parts. The first one, do you want me to take the high first or the low?
Whichever.
Okay, cool. I'll take the low first because I feel like if we end on a high, that'll be better. I would say a low in college, and I think that like almost every single student goes through this, but something called the sophomore slump. I know that like at least I know business kids go through this because when you're a freshman, you're kind of like the new shiny little student that everybody wants to be like, join my org, join my thing. Like a lot of people like to put emphasis on freshmen. Which I think is very opposite from high school. But your freshman year is just about exploring and kind of like finding your friend group and doing a bunch of fun things. Classes aren't super hard, so that's like super fun. And just kind of exploring the city that you're in and your college campus. And then when it comes to sophomore year, I think that's when you start kind of freaking out because you kind of have to get your stuff together a little bit. And particularly my sophomore year, I was going through recruiting because business recruiting is kind of weird. I was recruiting for this thing called investment banking, and I did it my sophomore year for my junior internship, so it was super early, and there's a lot of competitiveness going on around that. So low for me was definitely like trying to figure out my career super early on and just feeling the competition within our business school and just kind of questioning whether I was good enough to kind of achieve my career goals. And then a high, I would say, definitely, I think like going back to freshman year being really fun, I think my high was definitely freshman year spring when I joined one of the organizations that I'm in. It's called Delta Sigma Pi. I don't know if anyone who's watching this is in DSP, but definitely a high for me. I made a lot of my best friends through there, and it helped me grow as a person a lot.
Oh, to explain, what is investment banking?
Oh, okay. So depending on where you work, investment banking kind of means something different. So I work on the M&A team for a boutique bank. And so basically this past summer when I was an intern, our clients were small healthcare private companies, and then we were helping them sell to kind of a different array of buyers. Some of them would be private equity, some of them would be strategic buyers and stuff like that. So basically like bigger healthcare companies. But that's what I do, and that's what I'll be doing starting August for full time.
Is there something that like you, or rather to rephrase the question I was thinking of, is like, is this something you're really passionate about going into college, or is this something that you kind of like picked up along the way and were like, oh, maybe this sounds cool?
Yeah, so I think that a lot of people come into college, or the people that end up doing investment banking, I think a lot of them come into college kind of already knowing what it is. Maybe they had a family member doing it, or they had learned about it in some way or another. I was complete opposite. I came into college as a marketing major because Ben, as you mentioned before, I did have a YouTube channel. I don't really do it anymore, but I did consider myself a pretty creative person, so I ran I was really into do-it-yourself stuff, and like I ran a nail Instagram, and I did that kind of stuff. So I was a marketing major because I thought that was very fitting for me. And I went on this random trip to New York that the business school puts on, and I kind of found investment banking through that. And we were visiting like all the different banks, and I fell in love from there. And so I decided to pursue it, and that's how I am where I am now.
Dang. How would you say like you, like after you found it, what was the thing that like really stood out to you?
I think what stands out is that everybody, at least the people that I knew that worked in banking, were extremely motivated, and they kind of knew what they wanted in the next few years, and they kind of knew the trajectory that they wanted to take. And so that was really inspiring to me. The people that just worked in it were really inspiring.
Dang. So on that note, do you consider yourself a person that's like really likes planning things out, or you just like prefer spontaneous things?
I definitely like planning things out. I think that I think I am spontaneous in certain aspects, like more short term, like considering more short term things, like stuff that I do day to day, week to week. But I definitely like am the type of person to think about like 5-10 years ahead of myself and kind of see where I am in that regard.
Mm. So this is just a continuous string of questions, but I was just really curious to know like what was your expectation in high school, because you had like maybe a 4-year plan or something going into college, and then what was like how is it contrasted to the reality of what actually happened?
Yeah, so I actually think that I didn't kind of get into this mindset of planning out until I got to college, because when I think back to my high school self, um, I don't know what I thought I was going to do. I did a lot of different things. So when I was a freshman, my high school actually has a medical program. So I was in that for a little bit, mainly because my sister was also in it, like my older sister. So I thought I would do it. It wasn't for me. I quit. And then I ended up doing like a lot of STEM stuff in high school because we developed a STEM program, and I was in like one of the first classes for that. So then when I was applying to college, I was debating business or engineering, and I ultimately chose business, which was honestly on a whim because I was also considering going to SMU, and if I went there, I would have done engineering. So basically, I had no idea. I didn't know like what any career would. I literally had no idea about anything, and so I think that going to Macombs and going to UC was a really good decision for me because I think it helped guide me a lot and set me on a path to where I could figure myself out.
Mm.
Do you ever
What like oh you can go, Alex.
do you ever think about what life would be if you went to SMU and like how you would be as a like a person compared to like
Yeah, I mean, I think like there were like some, like it wasn't just SMU. There were like different schools that I was considering, but I am the youngest of 3 children, and my oldest sister went to SMU, and then my middle sister went to Harvard, and so they're very different. I mean, they're both private schools. I'm the first child that went to a public institution, but they're very different in the way that SMU. I mean, if you live in Dallas, it's about 45 minutes away from my house, and Harvard is a flight, and so it I think it affected my sisters in different ways. I remember when I was in middle school, I would drive up to SMU every single weekend with my parents to go visit my sister, which is completely unnecessary. And for the sister that went to Harvard, I mean, she was all the way in Boston, so I didn't really get to see her as much, and I know that she got kind of homesick sometimes. So for UT, it was like perfect in between. If I want to go home, or if I really need something from home, I can go home, but I'm not going to be doing it like often. And so that was perfect. And so I think if I did go to SMU, my parents would be doing the same thing that we did to my sister, and they'd be visiting all the time. And I don't know if I would have been able to grow as a person as much, just having my family there as like a crutch. Not to say that my sister didn't. I think she grew immensely, but I think that my experience would have differed a lot differently. And like, considering that I would have been doing a different major, I think I would be a completely different person. I think that business has affected, or majoring in business has affected like my personality and like the avenues of growth that I've taken.
Dang. So like how can you give me an example of like how it affected you, just curiously?
Yeah, I think like, and I can never speak to like what it would have been like if I did engineering or something, because I didn't do it, so I can't really say. But I mean, McCombs has just had a tremendously positive impact on me. I think that like the student orgs that we have within McCombs, I think we have like 39 MASOs now, so it's like student org life is a huge part of UT. But you know, especially being in DSP, I don't think I would have done that if I was at SMU or if I went to a different school. And I think that's like I think that is like a single-handedly the thing that changed my college career. You know, like, I mean, we've been good friends for a long time. So, you know, like I got very involved since freshman year. And so 4 years of that just like gave me my best friends, my best experiences, and kind of like it gives you, I would say, your highest highs and your lowest lows, but it pushes you to really care about other people.
Dang. What kind of camaraderie per se? Like, do you feel like that sense of like solidarity with like your pledge brothers?
Yeah. So I like, I think like in the fall and spring differ because fall has around like a little over 20 kids. Spring usually has around like 17, maybe less. My class ended up with like 13, so it was pretty small. One kid transferred out, but we're all still very, very close. I like met one of my best friends, Lucia, and like I feel like even though our pledge semester was only 10 weeks long, I still feel such a close connection with them because, you know, like, I mean, DSP does a really good job of grouping people who have similar mindsets together, but also bringing like diverse backgrounds. So basically, like, I still like that kid that transferred out to Cornell, like we still talk to him all the time. He flew back to visit specifically Austin, and he's from Dallas. Like he flew back to visit Austin multiple times of the year from New York, just because like we were so tight and we like missed each other so much.
Dang. So I kind of like ask this because like I'm not trying to like paint like with a broad brush, but I feel like Greek has its like reputation stained by sort of like, you know, scandalous events that occur. So I was just like curious, like what your thoughts on that were.
Yeah, so DSP is very different from social Greek. I don't even really, I like wouldn't even consider us like Greek. But yeah, I'm not too familiar about like the social Greek aspect of UT, but for DSP we do like we're under a national branch, so there are definitely rules and protocol that we have to follow. We have like nationals insurance and stuff like that. There's a lot of rules that we have to follow. So I think that's what has protected us and like kept us grounded, just because like I mean, we're a professional fraternity. Like we're not going to be out there we're not going to be hazing people or anything like that. So not to say that social Greek at UT is hazing people. I don't want to like say anything that's going to disregard that, but I can assure you that DSP does not do that. So I think that like, you know, we've never been under fire for that, and we never will be. So
Is it I guess like what are your like thoughts like on like social Greek specifically in comparison to like professional Greek?
yeah, so I think that like both are actually really good at finding like best, like, you know, building relationships and finding friends. I think that like there's four business fraternities on campus, and they're all great. Everyone I know in them like really enjoys being in them a lot. And then I think like there's people in DSP that are also in social Greek. And like I'm not too familiar with social Greek, but the friends that I know in it really, really like it. And I think that like I think there's definitely pros and cons. I think that, I mean, I know at UT it costs a lot of money, so that's definitely a con. But I think, and people like make fun of social Greek sometimes because they're like, oh, like you're paying for friends. But I genuinely like don't think that's a valid argument, because like, I mean, you like any organization that you're in, I mean, it usually has dues because they have to find a way to sustain themselves, and it's just like, it's just part of what it is. Yes, it's expensive, but I don't think it's a valid argument. So I don't really have a positive or negative opinion on social Greek, but I will vouch and say that the friends that I know in it really, really like it.
Kind of like speaking about paying for friends, like I was kind of thinking about it's like how expensive college is to some people and in general. And I think like the number one takeaway that a lot of people take out of college is like, hey, these are the friends I made. Like I've developed a lot of soft skills. I guess like what are your thoughts on like how there's like a perception that, like what makes college worth is like more about like the relationships you build and the soft skills you develop versus like the education you make, despite I guess like the price you have to pay for that.
Yeah, I think that, I mean, I do kind of have an opinion on I think that some institutions are incredibly expensive and overpriced. I personally believe that the University of Texas is not overpriced. I think that what we pay is very fair for what we get. I do think that there are some schools out there where you have to pay like $70,000 a year, and I think that's a bit ridiculous. But for what we pay, I think it's very fair. And I think that the soft skills that we do get out of college, and we do get some hard skills too, no matter what major you're in. I mean, like for business, like in my marketing classes, and like we do a lot of like analytics and statistics and stuff. And in our finance classes, we learn a lot. We do our studio and stuff like that. And I did get hard skills, but definitely the soft skills are what I think puts people like at the top. And like when we're interviewing for jobs and stuff like that, like Ben, you were talking about the other day, like for getting promotions, soft skills are extremely important, and it's those things that are going to put you on top and actually get you promotion. So I think that we get a lot of soft skills in our education, and that is like I think that is the most important thing that we gain.
Speaking of which, for the development of like soft skills, what do you think is like the best way to like go about getting those kind of things in college, right? So because like there's a lot of different avenues in which you can take it, so because like student orgs or just like doing your own thing or just like some other path, like what do you think is the best sort of method for that, like through your own experience?
Yeah, I think I genuinely think it was the student orgs that gave me like the leadership skills to work in a like a team working environment. And we definitely Holmes encourages like one of our biggest things is like we do group projects to like inspire leadership within our students and stuff. But I do think it's like definitely the student orgs that do that, because when you're in a student org, like you can run for positions, you always have to work with people. It kind of gives you an environment to learn about yourself and learn about others and see how people react in different situations. So I think it's definitely the student orgs. And also some of the student orgs mimic like corporations, like not exactly like corporations, but like kind of like how a business structure would work. And some of the orgs and masses that we have are professionally focused. So I would say it mimics it really well.
What are y'all's thoughts on like networking? Because I know in college, like people are always like, hey, like this is where, I guess like you hear so many stories like on like at Facebook, they all met in college, they're all working on Facebook, the website in their dorm. You hear about all sorts of like companies were like started by their friends they made in college. Wong Fu Productions, the YouTube channel, like they were all like really good college friends. But I guess like there's also like networking also has this like reputation of being like for snakes, I mean, I guess you are a marketer, but a lot of people are kind of just like, I don't really need to do networking. Like I'm not a business major, but yeah, I guess for both of y'all, and I can chime in later too, but like, what are your thoughts on like networking, if it's important or not?
Wait, what?
You want to go?
Yeah, sure. So I think networking is a necessary evil. Nobody likes to do it, but you need to. Well, there are some people who like to do it. And when I say networking, I mean like pure, like not just like going out to like input. Like I don't know. When I say networking, I mean purely like going to things to make connections to get a job. I think like nobody likes to do that, but it's a necessary evil. You're not going to get where you need to be without meeting the right people. I mean, a very small percentage of people will be able to do that without meeting the right people. But for the rest of us, normal people, we have to put ourselves out there, and we have to meet people to talk about their experiences to get more information. And that's how we're going to like learn more about where we want to be and what goals we have for ourselves. So it is a necessary evil. And I think I know you said the term like snakes and stuff, because a lot of people call Macomb students snakes and they associate that with networking. And I think what are you going to do? It's like, it's literally part of our major, I feel like. And I don't think it's fair to call Macomb's people snakes and just kind of umbrella everybody into the same thing. Because networking to us is like very important, and it's taught that it's important too. I don't know how you would disagree with that.
I totally agree. I also believe that painting Macomb students with a broad brush as snakes is just I would hope it's more a joke, or at least that's the optimistic side of me thinking that. But I know there are some people who genuinely believe it, and they're like, oh, they're just manipulating me. They're just trying to do X, Y, or Z and not actually get to know me. But I think it is a necessary evil. It is a skill that you must have to thrive. I don't think you can go anywhere without it.
I think that whatever major you're in, if you want a job, you have to be able to network. It's not just business students. It's having great interview skills and meeting the right people, even if you're applying to medical school or something like that. And so everyone needs it. It's a necessary evil. You just got to do it.
Another thing is, I think it's really, really hand in hand with social skills in general, right? It's pretty positively correlated that if you're good at networking, you're good at sociability, right? And so I just think in general, networking, you shouldn't just see it as it's a bad thing. I have to waste my time or devote X amount of time to doing it. You can still have fun doing it. You're still socializing in a sense. I think people view it very negatively as well.
I think if you go into networking thinking I'm not here to get a job, I'm here to learn more about them as people and myself as a person and see if we click, it's a lot better and it's a lot more fun. I don't think I ever walked into a room and was I am here just to get a job. I think that's going to make you sound super robotic, and people are going to be able to see that, and that's the networking that you don't want. But if you can if you go in with very true intentions, then it doesn't have to be bad.
Yeah, I really like that you just mentioned. There is a natural aspect to networking. It's not necessarily just here's my objective. I'm only gonna talk to people who I can use for my objective, and then if not, I'm just gonna dip. Some people do that, and it's really obvious and they're disingenuous, and of course that's what gives it a bad rep. But I think a lot of times networking is just if you're friends with someone, you're you scratch my back, I scratch yours. I'm able to have this network where everyone is able to kind of have they have their own special talent. I even remember for this podcast, how we got our fun YouTube thumbnail or the little design, that was through a connection, right? Ben had a friend whose sister was super into design, and then she was able to come up with these cutesy cartoon characters, and it left an impression, so stuff like that. I'm even something as innocuous as this podcast, because it's kind of just for fun. It's not we're doing this for a living. Even that still requires some form of networking.
So okay, here, think about this, right? So I feel part of the reason why networking has a negative connotation behind it is the natural human inclination towards distrust, right? It's kind of the idea where I gotta quit while I'm ahead, or it's I gotta stab him in the back before he stabs me in the back. What is your thoughts on those, both of you?
Can you
I don't think I've ever been in a situation where I've needed to be I gotta stab this person in the back before I get stabbed. I think that if you're thinking that, you're in a really toxic situation.
No, but just in general, not even networking aside, like, how do I like word this in a way that's like coherent? I'm just like trying to ask like how you feel about like distrust in general. Like maybe I guess a more applicable thing is like in coronavirus, right? Like it is safe to assume that like everyone else around you is like being sort of like irresponsible because that's like how you keep yourself the most safe. But like why is that the right way to think as opposed to like, oh, like I'm okay with trusting my fellow man?
Okay, gotcha. I think like in the coronavirus situation, like, well, personally, if my friends say that they have not been hanging out with other people, I mean, I genuinely trust them. I don't think they would like lie to me and like go to like a bar or something and like a party with a bunch of people and then show up to my house the next day and be like, I haven't hung out with anybody. And if you have friends that are doing that, drop them as friends. um, I mean, like wholeheartedly, I trust my friends, and like if they say they haven't been anywhere, then like I believe that they haven't been anywhere. Because in that situation, like if I had been to a bar or party or something, I would straight up be like if I and then I showed up to hang out the next day, I would straight up be like, yo, I went to this the other day, and then people told me to leave, like I would leave. And I think that's how it should be.
Yeah, it's very fair. I know for when you brought up the coronavirus, I thought it's funny because I know my parents were like very distrusting of like everybody in this situation. They're like,
Yeah, that's what I was talking about actually. Like not just distrusting your friends, but I mean like distrusting general people.
yeah.
Oh,
Especially
I
like
mean like
if you don't know the person, then you're gonna be like, well, I don't know where he's been, you know, stuff like that. Like it's like very natural to assume the worst in people, I think, especially if you're raised in like an immigrant Asian household, from East Asian household, at least from my experience.
I think that because I mean just like because I know people who would go out and party and stuff and like not be the safest, I think that like I mean, I guess I would distrust the general public, but that's because you literally see it in front of your eyes. So, like, how are you gonna deny that? You know,
Do y'all
like you
think
know people are going to the bars, so how are you gonna be like, oh, I trust that you haven't?
that's true? That's true. Do y'all think it's like a negative feedback loop? Kind of like, I don't trust this person, therefore I'm gonna do what's best for me. But then the other person is like, they're doing what's best for them, which isn't reflective of me. So I'm gonna do the best for me. And it's just like kind of, you know, there's a domino effect.
Yeah. Because I'm sort of like the kind of person that's like, I would like to see the best in people, you know? Like I wholeheartedly wish that one day we get to a state in the world where it's like you don't have to kind of like be fearful of like the person next to you if you're in like a certain part of like town or something, right? Like I really wish that like you could just leave your doors always unlocked and like you don't have to mistrust people, right? But in the current sort of like flow of the world, in a sense, like there are a lot of things that like, for example, it happens in front of your eyes, like it's undeniable evidence, you know? And so
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I guess the question was worded really poorly. I guess the best way to distill this is like, are you an optimist or are you a pessimist?
I think I think I used to be a pessimist, but over the past couple years, I've slowly transitioned into an optimist. But the reason why I think is that you're a pessimist if you like have doubts in yourself, so you have doubts in other people. And I think like over the past couple years, I've become a little bit more confident. And so I've seen that slow shift to optimism, and I start doing things like out of the goodness of my heart because I care about people. And then in my mind, I'm like, I know these people would do the same thing for me, and I'm optimistic about that. So I think like it's been a shift of like how insecure I was like a few years ago to now like being more comfortable in myself.
What about you, Alex?
I'm a pretty big pessimist. I have no faith in mankind or myself. And yeah, I think that shows. I guess Ben would know, but I'm usually just at our place. And I mean, I sometimes, you know, there's a saying that like a cynic is just a broken idealist. And, you know, I think I can see that in myself. Sometimes I'm like, I would like to have a lot of faith in people, but I think there's just a lot of times, like even in my own personal life, where I'm like, I hear people are like, oh, like let's be intentional with each other, like let's be friends, right? And then like I'm trying, but like I can tell they don't mean it. So whenever like I hear stuff like that, I'm just automatically discounting in my head like it's not gonna happen, like they don't actually mean it, stuff like that. But I've recognized that it is harmful to think that way, because like just because like I've had poor experiences with some people like doesn't mean that everyone's a bad apple. But it is difficult to kind of break out of that habit, for sure. But that does actually make me think like, do you, because like I think something like Cameron said was like, oh, like like I become more of an optimist, like I try to do things out of the good of my heart. Do y'all think that like you can be an altruistic pessimist, I guess? Because like now that I think about it, a lot of times you kind of pair like a lot of negative traits with pessimism, which is fair. It is not a great trait, and a lot of positive traits with optimism. But like there could be like malevolent optimists out there, right? Like people with like not good intentions. So I was wondering if like if what are your thoughts on like this kind of switcheroo dichotomy?
Yeah, I'll go. Like, I kind of think that like a lot of things are nice in moderation. Like, I believe that like too much pessimism or too much optimism is bad, right? Like, for example, too much optimism means you have like way too much faith in things that like might not work, right? Like, even besides people, right? Like, if you're too optimistic, you might gamble on like a 5% chance, and that's 95% chance of failure, right? Like, that is far too optimistic. And on the other hand, there's like pessimists who are like, the odds are 95% that I succeed, but that's 5% I fail. Like 5 out of 100 times I fail. That's so bad. And so I think a lot of things are taken in moderation. So if you pin back everything, like you pull like the optimist back to the center and pessimist back to the center, I think you can definitely have situations where it's like an altruistic pessimist or like a malicious optimist.
I think I'm struggling to comprehend what you mean by a like malicious optimist.
Okay, so like, because optimism just really means that you believe that your plans will come to fruition, or like it could mean like the world is out to for the.
Are you saying like you believe that your plan? Sorry, your plans will work, but your plans are bad.
Yeah, like that's one example.
Okay.
And then what would an altruistic pessimist look like?
So someone who's still trying to do good for the world when they don't think there's a point, or like it's hopeless. So kind of like trying. So say this isn't exactly an altruistic pessimist, but it is something on my mind. So I like to follow soccer. So I support a German team called Borussia Dortmund, and they haven't won shit for the past 10 years. So basically the big part of soccer is that you want to win like the league. You want to place number one in like your domestic league. And so there's this team in Germany called Bayern Munich, and like they've won the league title 8 years in a row. And they're really consistent, they're really dominant. They're considered a top 3 soccer club in the world. And sometimes I'm like watching like my team Dortmund play, and I'm like, they're never going to win because like they're too inconsistent and the team in front of them is too consistent. So I'm kind of a pessimist. But like they're probably pessimistic too, because like players are like not robots. But like they still have to try to win the title, like entertain their fans, give hope, even if they may not believe it. So like I guess that's like kind of like an altruistic pessimist. Like they're trying to provide hope for their fans and like themselves, but they don't necessarily believe it will work.
I mean, that's kind of what like shorting stock and put options are, right? Like you're betting on a company failing.
Oh, elaborate. I don't know much about this.
Yeah.
So like when you short stock, it means like, or like when you trade options and you're like selling short, or like you have put options or you're buying a put or whatever, it means that you can sell an option or a stock for a specific price. So for example, if Microsoft was at $100 right now, and I think it's going to go down, it means I'm going to like guarantee, I'm going to trade with you a contract that guarantees that I can sell this stock to you for $100. But then I think the stock is going to shoot down to $30. So I would sell the shares to you, and then on the date that I need to give them to you, the shares would shoot down to $30. I'll buy the shares for 30, and you have to buy them from me for 100 because we traded that contract. So like, you're betting that a company is going to fail. I don't know if that's like the same kind of principle of like that mindset is pessimistic. Like you think the company's going to fail, but you like really, really think it's going to fail.
I see.
Or I feel like it might be like a malicious optimist, right? Because you are hoping that it will fail, right? And then that is like kind of bad because like it is a company failing.
Yeah, because like you think it will fail and you're taking advantage of that, which could be seen as malicious, right?
Yeah, that's kind of what I thought of when you said that.
I mean, that's kind of a malicious optimist. Yeah, I guess when I think of like an altruistic pessimist, I just think of a guy who's like willing to run into a brick wall, even though he knows that like there's literally no point in doing that. But like there might be some benefit. Like I don't know, people are somehow entertained, or he's doing it for charity or whatever.
I mean, that's like parents trying to do everything that they can to make sure their child gets good grades, but they don't actually have faith in their child.
That's actually a really good point. I remember specifically.
You have to do everything you can. You're not going to not do everything you can. But what if you're just like, Mom, my kid's dumb? Like,
specifically in my life, that was my dad to me. Because like in middle school, he actually straight up told me like, I think he thought I was actually just like dumb. Like he straight up just like, I don't really see any hope for this kid academically, but I'll still buy some books and like tutor him and hope for the best. And then I think things were wildly out of his expectations because I went to UT for CS, and then in middle school I was really bad at math. So then he was like, I was really nervous whenever he took a math test. But yeah, so I guess that is kind of an example where like, you know, my dad still tried even though he was like, my son's a complete idiot.
Yeah.
Wait, so what was the question again?
Honestly, y'all basically answered it. I was just like, how do y'all think it's possible, or what are some examples of a malicious optimist and a altruistic pessimist? Because like usually we attribute these like positive traits, like we kind of pair them up with each other. So like an optimist is like trying to do everything for the good of mankind, and a pessimist is like, I don't know, kind of a dick, and like he's like selfish and doesn't care. So yeah, that's just something that kind of popped up in my mind when Cameron was describing her transition to optimism.
Ooh, back to that actually. She brought it up earlier too. It's like, do you think your pessimism is like somehow linked to like a lack of confidence or like insecurity?
Are you talking to me?
Yeah.
Yeah, probably. I mean, that makes sense. Like, yeah, I'm also like pretty insecure in my abilities. I don't have much confidence in who I am as a person, what I can do. So it's like very natural for me to kind of just be like, what's the point of having expectations? Because like, yeah, I think like even one example is like whenever someone's like, there's no way you can fail this, my first instinct is, why be the first person to fail this and embarrass myself? Not, oh, no one's gonna fail this, so I'm chilling. I didn't really I never really thought of myself as that big of a pessimist until like this year when someone was like, Alex, you're the biggest pessimist I've ever met. I was like, dang. Because this guy was like 27, 28 years old. And I was like,
oh my gosh.
You've lived life a lot longer than me. So that's not a good sign if I'm the big
that's some hard hitting.
Yeah.
Ooh.
And he's worked with a lot of people too. So I'm like, I'm gonna reevaluate myself.
Yeah.
Okay, wait. That made me think of something. Do you think the way people perceive you like greatly affects you like mentally? Because like as Alex just said, he's like, I didn't think I was a pessimist until this guy who's like, you know, he seems like he's pretty credible, like told me I'm a really big one.
Okay, so the debate of whether you should care about what people think about you or not, I think that you should to an extent, actually. I think that like, I mean, obviously the way people perceive you can limit you in a lot of situations, especially in the workplace. So you should be self-aware of how you come off to other people, and like you should care, because if people perceive you as mean and you think you're just like this nice person, you know, like you probably are kind of mean, and you should work on that. And it's, you know, it's not all about you. It is about other people and how you treat them. And so like, I do think that you should care about what other people think, because, you know, sometimes you're blinded because you think that you're right all the time, or like maybe you don't, I don't know. But like the way you treat people and the way people see you is very important.
Yeah, I feel like it's always I feel like people always kind of have a pendulum, like they swing to like different extremes of like, oh, like I don't care what people think of me at all. Like only my opinion matters, to like, you know, they care too much, and then they're like always flip flopping. Like their perception of themselves changes based on like what people say about them. I guess like for me personally, I guess yeah. Sometimes I think I do care a lot about what other people think of me, mainly because of my lack of confidence, and that like I don't really trust evaluations of myself. I remember like as a kid, well not as a kid, I guess in high school, like I would see a lot of people who are kind of delusional in their like their abilities, and like they're not very self-aware. And I was like, I do not want to be like that when I grow up. So I was always like, but like in their minds, like, you know, they think like they are like, you know, really good at, I don't know, like coding, or like really good, like they have like great ambitions in their life. But like I could tell from the outside that that wasn't the case. But I'm like, how do I know that like someone is thinking the same thing as me? And so then I became very much like, okay, I always have to seek like an outside opinion, an objective opinion, because like I feel like I can be like the biggest liar to myself.
I think the hearing both of you may have changed my mind a little bit about this, because I've kind of always been more on the side. It's like, you know, like people perceive you a certain way, but it's like you shouldn't take it to heart too much. But now I think about it, Cameron, you are both right. Like your perceived self and your actual self aren't like randomly different. They're not like one is fake and one is real. They're both like two sides of the same coin. So I think it is like important to like care about like how you come off, how you seem. Like for example, I was talking about this with someone recently. Is like the idea of vanity, right? Like vanity inherently in itself is not bad. Like it is, you know, like people would like it that you keep up your appearance to some degree, right? It's not just like a thing where it's like you're always selfishly like looking at yourself. There's some aspect of like self grooming, and I think that like, you know, it's human nature to kind of be vain. So I've kind of like started swinging on the pendulum a little. I was like, I feel like vanity is like a good thing in like a checked amount. What do you think?
I think I may be getting confused on the definition of vanity. I thought vanity was like being like very like obsessed with yourself.
Wait, am I?
Vanity, like,
wait, let me look this up really quick.
I think vanity in of itself is like an inflated like obsession with like one's appearance. So like inherently it's bad, but it is good to take care of your appearance. I think maybe some people like might kind of run with like, oh, like you care about your appearance, you care too much about your appearance, you're vain, you know, and it's like very extreme. But I think vanity in of itself is like is meant to like, if someone calls you vain, then like it's not good. But they may be wrong. The definition of vanity is definitely not good.
Okay, yeah, so I just looked it up. It's inflated pride on one's appearance. So maybe it is inherently bad, but I think like there is some level of you do, or rather you should care about your appearance. Like, you know, like the idea of like social IQ, emotional IQ, and like all these like different types of like intelligence. Like there is some aspect of like, you are really smart if you know how to handle social situations. It's not just like you're only like being book smart is like the only way to evaluate intelligence.
Yeah, I mean, like they always say, like kind of branching off your statement, how like emotional EQ, or emotional EQ gets you further in life than just like your typical IQ, right? Yeah, I remember in middle school, like I think when people discovered what EQ was, they're like, or they call it street smarts, and they're always like, yes, I care so much more about street smarts, not book smarts, because like they were really bad in school. And I was like, I don't think y'all are good at street smarts. I think you're just trying to run away from the problem. Yeah, that's just something I randomly thought of when I was.
That's funny.
I mean, I remember, Cameron's also said this about me too. I remember I used to think like book smarts was like the only thing you really needed. This was a very flawed logic back
I
then.
feel like this was like freshman year, Ben.
It was because
Like you only did school, like, but I mean, also like I should have cared about school more. Like we probably would have done better balancing each other out.
yeah, like I totally agree. Like there is a balance you must strike. I think it is important to keep your sort of like social welfare in check as well as your like mental welfare and as well as like I guess like your what is it like your scholarliness.
Yeah. Honestly, when sometimes I remember like when I was in college and people who are entering college would ask me, what's your advice for college? I'm kind of just like, whatever your thoughts are about, like your expectation is like whether you should study all day or whether you just want to have fun, do the exact opposite. And then since your natural inclination is to like not do what the opposite is, like you'll find yourself in the middle and it'll be a good balance.
So I was also thinking about this because I was playing like a question game. It's called like We're Not Really Strangers, and there's like basically different levels of friends. I mean, different levels of depth of questions. And one that really stood out to me was like, which lesson took you the longest to unlearn? And I answered, I was like, the idea of like, you know, superiority complex and sort of like this idea that book smarts is like everything, right? Like as Cameron said, in freshman year, I was kind of like a study only kind of guy. And like, I realized the error of my ways now, but I feel like just growing up, I was sort of like only evaluated on academics. And so I didn't think life consisted of anything else besides academics.
That's so crazy to me because in high school, even I feel like academics. Okay, so high school, I feel like puts a stronger emphasis on academics because there are like extracurricular activities, but like in college, you're just around your friends all the time, so it's easy to like not care about school as much. But in high school, you go to school, you go home, and then your parents tell you to do your homework, or like maybe that's not how it is for everybody, but I think that's pretty much how it was for me. But I think like even in high school, you know, you have that kind of like I don't know how to explain this, like you learn some social skills because you kind of want to be popular, or you know, stuff like that. It's just like grades were a lot more, but I feel like grades still weren't everything. So I find that really interesting that you were like, I was only evaluated on my grades, because like when I think of high school, I think like I'm also evaluated like by my peers and like kind of like not social status, but like what people think of me and like what I'm doing, or like if I'm going to like cheer on our football team, like where I'm at, like stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the reason why, or actually, this is like a bad way to put it, but like the high school I went to was like very competitive, and so sort of like the only thing everyone cared about really was just like grades, like how that would be like the stepping stone for the next step, which is college, and which turn would be the next step for your job, right? Like everyone's kind of just like looking ahead, thinking about like these academics is like the only gateway that can like get you into sort of like these the next step, right? It's like, oh, if I get like the top of the class, I can like go to, I don't know, like Harvard. And from Harvard, I can get like the best job in whatever field I want. Like that was sort of like the mentality a lot of my peers had back in high school. And so it was kind of a lot, like that's kind of like how I myself thought like networking was worthless back in high school. And then now, like I came to college, I realized like how much impact it can have on your own life. I realize now that like there's a lot of things that like happened in my high school that were kind of like, it was like a twisted reality, you know, like academics are important, but it's not the only way that can like open the door for you.
I think, okay, so I think networking is a lot more important now than it was in high school. I think if you were just like trying to network with everybody in high school, that I don't know like where that would have gotten you. Your grades were really bad and you were just like networking. I don't really know. I don't know if that would have gotten you. I would say that networking is a lot more important now. But I do agree with you that your high school specifically was very much like school, school, school. And like, I wouldn't even say I went to a bad, like, I think that my school is also very competitive, but I think that the people I grew up around, like, our parents were very like, do a sport, do an extracurricular activity, have fun, like do whatever you want, make sure your grades are good, but like the social skills and the organizations and the outside activities are extremely important. And so that's like one of the things that my dad said to me the other day is he was just like, you know, we picked this specific area to live in because like those things are important to us. And so like things like, you know, I was on the tennis team when I was in high school, and that was something that was super important to my dad. My sister was like a nationally renowned diver. My other sister was in flute/marching band, stuff like that. And like, I know your school also had a ton of kids who did that, and your school also like obviously has those activities. But like those things are very important to the people like that I grew up around. And I know my dad, like, he was like, he specifically was like, we didn't move to the town that he was like, we didn't move to the town that like you live in, because he was just like, I think you would have felt a lot of pressure because like the kids that you would have been competing against, you know, were a very high caliber. And he was like, I don't know, not that he didn't have faith in me, but like he was like, you know, I just didn't want you to be in that environment.
Yeah, for some context, like Ben, like is from Plano, and Plano has like a high. We can say Plano. It's a city.
Yeah.
It's a city in the U.S. There's a high Chinese American population, and you know, stereotypically, you know, Chinese Americans, like especially immigrants, like really value education. Like they believe it's you know, the surefire path to success. So I think like his high school had a high concentration of like East Asians, and South Asians. Not saying that like, you know, that demographic is like inherently smarter, but there's a lot of emphasis on academics, and you know, it can be very toxic at times.
Yeah, my parents definitely prioritized academics over everything, but the extracurricular stuff was like almost just as important. Like it was extremely important to my parents.
Yeah, I think something I didn't realize that my dad told me a lot was like you need to like make friends, and it's like the idea of like, you know, like discarding your friends or sort of like, you know, not really like making the effort to maintain your friendships is kind of like a bad mentality to be in. Back then I didn't really realize what he was talking about, because I was like, oh, that's a waste of my time. You know, you can't like study if you're like out like doing random stuff, hanging out with your friends. And now I realize,
so weird. I just have never met a kid that has that mentality unless it was like given to them by their parents.
Yeah, I think a major influence on that was like my peers, right? And I think this is also says a lot for you too, because you said you were really influenced by your peers, and I think I was too. I think a large part of it was like the sort of like the ranks were made public. A lot of people would talk about like, oh, who's rank 1, who's like what yada 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 rank. Like I think that was like a really negative part of it. But then like I thought about it, I was like, you know, work ethic is something that like I definitely got from going to school here. And I was like, you know, maybe it's like a double-edged sword, you know, kind of like cut yourself to like gain something.
What in college made you like recognize the importance of like networking, right? Because now you have a very different view on networking.
Okay, part of it was that I was like, I came into college with like kind of like a superiority complex. And like, I think my friend earlier today explained it best to me. It's like, when I was working out, I would think, oh, that skinny guy, he's like weaker than me. He's like, so it's whatever. And then it's like, if I see a stronger guy, I'd just be like, oh, he's dumber than me. It's like, I always had to like find some way to have like an edge in my own mind against like everyone I saw. And then it wasn't until I like met people with like just diverse skill sets and not coming from the same background that I realized I was like, you know, there's a lot of other cool things to do besides just like fucking thinking you're better than everyone else. And then I was like, you know, fuck, I'm like not better than everyone else.
You know, that I'm glad that you reached the conclusion like, hey, it's better to just meet people and appreciate what people have to offer. Because I know a lot of people, when they realize they're not better than everyone else, it's kind of a existential crisis and a mental breakdown. But I also think like another reason like maybe why you had so much emphasis on like academics was like, you're a pre-med, you were a pre-med major at not pre-med major, you're a pre-med student at like UT. Like, I think for a lot of people, like they definitely come in with the mindset of like grades are like really important, which is true. And like that, even the idea of networking to like to like a lot of pre-med students is like stupid to them, right? Like honestly, it's just like I just have to put my head down, work really hard, do all these extracurriculars. Honestly, like the more I think about it, is a lot like high school 2.0. Like you're doing all these like volunteer work that you don't care about, and you're kind of just like, how can I like become a president of a club like doesn't have any impact on campus, but it'll look good on my resume, versus like yeah, maybe like a business finance student who are like, there is more emphasis on like going out and like networking, making connections.
Okay, to start wrapping things up, because we're encroaching on the hour mark now. We're just going to end with like one question. This is another question that came up in my game today that I thought was really interesting is, what is something about your younger self, like what's something about you today that your younger self would not believe?
Somebody else go first.
I'll just say my answer so that you guys have time to think. So the answer I gave today was I feel like my younger self would definitely not believe that I would like kind of like be confident in making friends, or just like the types of people I'm even friends with today. Like Cameron, for example, is someone that like, especially my high school self, would never have like even interacted with. And it's like,
why?
It's just because like I didn't fucking interact with people, period, like it's just like, I feel like my younger self saw me today, it would just seem like I was a different person. Like it would just be like, who even is this guy? How can it like turn around so quick in just like 4 years? Like my younger self would never believe that.
I always think it's funny whenever.
Oh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, I always think it's funny whenever Ben says that to like a person, and the other person's like, "Why?" Like it's something like on them. It's really just Ben's just like lack of confidence back then. But yeah, you can go.
I think that my younger self wouldn't believe that, like, one, the confidence thing too. Like I also agree with that, but then two, I think that I don't think my younger self would believe in like how, like, I guess not aggressive. I feel like aggressive is just like has a bad connotation, but just like how like I think like I've set some goals for myself and like actually worked really hard to achieve them. I think like I chased them really, really hard and like didn't give up on them. And I think that like literally the only word I can find right now is aggressive, like aggressively chase them. But I think my younger self like wouldn't have like had faith in myself to believe that, which like goes back to the confidence thing. I think like I used to be a really, really shy child. I like would never speak, like mostly at home, and like I would barely speak at school too. Like I had a lot of trouble with that. So I would say the same, but I think that just like goes along with like growing up and maturing and just like kind of like finding out who you are. You just like at some point you just can't give, like you just can't really care anymore. Like you have to be yourself and like have faith in who you are. And I think like one thing is like, that you have confidence in yourself when you like can walk into a room and you don't compare yourself to anybody. Like you can look at someone and be like, wow, they're doing such great things, and that has nothing to do with what you're doing. And I think that's like how you know that you like believe in yourself and you have confidence.
Maybe, okay, I retract my previous statement. Maybe in high school we would have been friends. Because I was like, I wouldn't say anything either. Birds of the same like flock together.
Yeah, I like literally didn't talk until like high school.
Yeah, I'm pretty similar to all three of you. Like middle school, high school, elementary school, I was a very shy kid. I was basically a wallflower. I feel like my goal at stuff was to not exist. Like I was that afraid of people. So honestly, I would be very shocked at who I am today. I'm not the most extroverted person still, but I know I'm able to have small talk with people. I remember whenever there were like Asian parties, like I would always just be on my phone, like somewhere far away. Like I would refuse to play like cards or whatever with people, or I'd just be on my computer. And looking back, I was like, dang, I'm pretty awkward, and that was very rude to do. But like, I was just really scared of people.
Yeah.
But like now, even hosting this podcast, like I'd be like, why would I host a podcast? Like I have nothing to say, like I have nothing to provide, having more confidence and like, just being willing to literally have a podcast is just about having like good conversations with people. Because before I'd just be like, I can't even have a conversation with someone. So like even having like leadership positions, like in college, I was able to kind of lead like small group for my ministry and like kind of be kind of an officer coordinator for my ministry. And even then, before I kind of just be like, oh, I don't want to lead a small group or Bible study because like I don't have people skills. Like I can't connect with people to make them feel welcome, to like doing that, to even kind of managing more logistics. Because before I just be like, what if I mess things up, right? So a lot of ways like overcoming, even though like I was very pessimistic in my abilities and helping other people out, like trying to overcome that and still trying that. That's something I'm really grateful for, like being able to go to college. And yeah, that's definitely something younger me would just be like, do I even know you? But yeah.
Ben, do you think you're an extrovert or an introvert?
Oh, for sure, introvert. But I feel like I feel like it's an acquired taste for me. I feel like I can exhibit the qualities of an extrovert, but at the end of the day, I need like my alone time. Like I can't be with people all the time. I sort of need to recharge my social battery because I feel like being around people is nice, but I feel like my natural inclination is just to be alone. Wait, since you were shy as a kid, do you feel like you went from introvert to extrovert, or are you like?
All my friends say I'm an extrovert. I personally think I'm an introvert. I think that like, yeah, like everyone's always just like, Cameron, you're like an extrovert. And if you take that Myers-Briggs test, like I technically from that, I am an extrovert. I'm an ENFP, ENFPJ, I think. But I just don't believe I'm an extrovert. I think like in certain situations, I still am kind of shy. Like, for example, like I am deathly afraid of speaking up in class because I think that like whatever I say is just going to be made fun of. I like if I'm introduced to like a new social group, I don't know, like when I first got into UBC, like I literally just wouldn't say anything. I was afraid to go into the Frito because I had no friends, and I thought like it took me a really, really long time to make friends. Because if I don't know you, it's really pretty hard for me to open up to you. Not on a one-on-one setting. I'm like okay with like one-on-one stuff, but like if it's a big group, like I don't want to talk in front of people. I don't want to like put myself out there. So I would say I'm still an introvert, but I think like my friends would say I'm an extrovert just because they know me pretty well, and then it's like easy to know me once you've broken down a barrier.
I think it's interesting how for like a lot of people who are introverts, that can play like that role of like a loud, exciting person. Everyone's like, oh, you have to be an extrovert. But on the inside, they're like, if there's one thing I'm sure of, I'm an introvert. Seeing that like disparity going around. But I do think like something I learned that's like helpful is like introvertism, extrovertism is more like a spectrum than like kind of a binary category. So like, everyone has elements, but no, if a person's 100% extroverted, 100% introverted, like they would literally be in the asylum because like they'd be insane and incapable of being pleased. But yeah, wrapping things up, this was a great episode. This is Nuanced Nonsense. Once again, we're not experts, but we just like talking. And hope you all enjoyed this episode. Signing out.
Thank you for having me.